Altmann. I am the president of the Conservative Party of Bucknell. I'd like to start by thanking a few people. Mike Dyken, the comrade, Provost Altmann, shortly, Mark Merino, Chris Riley, Al, and the public safety. So I stand here today with Brady Clapp, president of the College Democrats, Chris Shadek, president of the College Republicans, and Ciccotta, who is the president of Young American Federation.
We stand here together as a gesture of unity. On September 11, 2001, we were neither Democrats nor Republicans, liberals nor conservatives. We were Americans, and we stood together regardless of political persuasion or ideological beliefs. This is important to stress, particularly in today's polarized political climate.
Many of our fellow students were only in first grade or kindergarten that morning, but it is something we will never forget. We've grown up in the post-9/11 world, and we feel the legacy of that fateful day even now, 15 years later. But while we were shaped by the tragedy of 9/11, we were also inspired and emboldened by the heroism, sacrifice, and patriotism shown that day.
So today is not just a vigil in memory of all those we lost, but a celebration of the American spirit and the heroism that drove so many to rush to Ground Zero to help save lives, even at the cost of their own. It's their sacrifices that have kept the American dream alive. It's my great privilege to introduce Professor Alexander Riley to the stage.
Thank you very much for having me, inviting me. Thank you to everyone involved who put this together. And most of all, thank you to everyone who's here. We're very grateful to have you. As many remarked, September 11, 2001 seemed an idyllic day in the beginning. The weather across the East Coast was wonderful that late summer morning. Everything drenched in sunlight, the season's remaining humidity wafted away by a slight caressing breeze. It was the kind of perfect day that gives one to think that all was in its place. The busy hum of people in cars in their comforting commerce, students returning to school after vacation. One more bright and lovely gift of a day before the leaves begin to change color. The summer fades into autumn. And then came the maelstrom. We were savagely attacked that morning, 15 years ago. And we were gravely injured. The injury made all the more startling when we learned that it was a rather ragtag bunch of 19 men on passenger planes who had inflicted it. There's no denying the darkness of that day. Even now, all these years later, I cannot see that dreadful footage of the second plane, United Flight 175, as it appears menacingly at the border of the screen, and then disappears into the South Tower World Trade Center without a pang of despair in the pit of my stomach. But the despair is not the story of September 11th, though that was certainly the intent and the hope of our attackers. The immediate emergency response and the steady efforts of those in the days to follow to care for the injured, search for the dead, and to begin the Herculean tasks of cleanup and rebuilding reminded us of who we are as Americans. It showed in vivid hues some of our most admirable qualities: our resolve, our resourcefulness, our compassion, our love of country. The emergency personnel, the police, fire departments, first aid crews, all those who immediately went into action at the towers in New York City, and who were in a flash on the scene at the Pentagon and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, looking for those in need of aid. They quickly became the face of the day as the smoke cleared. And for 15 years now, we have celebrated and given thanks to those men and women who in many cases gave their very lives in the course of doing this work. And in gratitude and admiration, we do so again today. They were and are American heroes. And as the details of the day's events became clearer with the passage of the hours, we learned about still other heroes. Their signature act was hidden initially by the confusion of the day. But in time, they're easily recognized as of such proportions that they took up place at the very heights of the American pantheon of heroes. These were the men and women aboard the fourth plane, United Flight 93. Enough distance from September 11, 2001 has now accumulated that I very frequently encounter people, and not only younger people, who do not even know how many planes were involved in the attack, much less the key details of what took place on United 93. So permit me then just a quick summary of some of the relevant facts. There were 4 planes hijacked that day by Islamist Al-Qaeda suicide terrorists bent on destroying us physically and symbolically. 2 of those planes, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175, were crashed into the towers of the World Trade Center. 1, American Airlines Flight 77, was flown into the Pentagon. And then there was this 4th plane, United Airlines Flight 93. If I may, I'd like to speak to you briefly about this plane and remind you of its overwhelming importance in the meaning of the events of September 11, 2001. What happened on United 93? Well, that plane was delayed in takeoff by almost an hour due to airport traffic. And because of this delay, the passengers were able, in the minutes after it was hijacked, approximately 3/4 of an hour after it left the ground, to inform themselves about what was happening elsewhere. They became aware of the attacks in Manhattan and in Washington, D.C. by making cell phone calls to their family and friends. They quickly surmised what the terrorists intended to do with their plane, and they collectively and emphatically refused that planned narrative of the end of their lives. There were just a few dozen people on that plane, exactly 40, counting the crew and the flight staff. And they were horrified when they put the pieces together and they realized what was happening on their plane and elsewhere as United 93 turned over Ohio to start back eastward, pointed toward the nation's capital. And judging from some of their phone conversations with their loved ones, they experienced, for a time at least, the kind of anguished helplessness that any normal human being would in that kind of predicament. They were told by the hijackers that they would do best to do nothing. Over the intercom, they heard the command in broken English: "Sit down. Keep remaining seated. We have a bomb on board. So sit." But I repeat, they had learned what was happening. And thus they knew, at least in general outline, what their attackers intended to do. The World Trade Center and the Pentagon are not randomly selected targets. They're symbols of American strength, American enterprise, the American spirit. And terrorists specifically choose such targets because of the nature of their malign work. Terrorism indeed inspires terror, and it intimidates its victims. It uses the human carnage it produces, certainly, but it does so also, and perhaps even more effectively, precisely because this enables it to reach even populations that are too large to physically kill, through its symbolic act of destruction and sacrilege. Terrorists seek not only to kill individuals, but to break the spirit of survivors, and they pursue this sinister goal by murdering their loved ones and by assaulting the symbols they hold dear. The passengers on Flight 93 guessed that the hijackers of their plane were very likely aiming at a similarly symbolic target. They gauged the magnitude of that intention and the awful damage that that fate would entail, both human and symbolic. And so, they didn't sit down. They stood up. A handful of them first. Several resolute men who stepped forward and organized the group, and then, in consultation with the others, they put together a plan to resist the terrorists, to thwart their designs. Robert Jr., a Minnesotan by birth who was on his way back to his California home after a business trip that morning, was one of the 4 men who spearheaded the effort to retake the plane. He had several brief conversations with his wife, Dina, that spanned the time from the hijack to just minutes before the plane struck ground at 10:03 a.m., just over a half hour after the hijacking began. In the last of these several calls, Burnett's wife told him of the strike on the Pentagon. She had earlier informed me that the World Trade Center had been hit. It's a suicide mission, he immediately guessed. We have to do something. I'm putting a plan together with several people. There's a group of us. He told her they were waiting until the plane was over a rural area, at which point they would attempt to take it back from the hijackers. Her reaction was visceral, instinctively protective of her husband. No, she emphatically responded. Sit down, be still, be quiet. Don't draw attention to yourself. Tom told Dina to pray, and then he said this. Don't worry, Dina. I'll be home for dinner. I may be late, but I'll be home. When I first read those words in Dina Burnett's remarkable book about her husband's life and death, I was stunned. In the face of that horror, under the weight of those dreadful circumstances, in a hijacked plane flying at 40,000 feet on a suicide terror mission, he says these words. Determined, unflappable, confident, clear of vision and purpose, though confronting the confusion and chaos. As a child, informed by the popular wisdom of my generation, I think I already knew that's what heroes are supposed to sound like. I honestly don't recall ever encountering a non-fictional example of one actually sounding like that, and in the moment just prior to his heroic act, until I learned of Tom Burnett's words to his wife. That's what heroes sound like. Tom Burnett's words have stayed with me these 15 years, and I believe they will stay with me for as long as I'm here in this world. And they give me confidence, and they give me purpose, and they make me proud of this, my country, Tom Burnett's country. So, led by a handful of determined, brave men, those 40 courageous pastors got together. And they overlooked whatever superficial differences they had in politics and religion, and income level, and education, and race. And they made it impossible for the terrorists to carry out their intended act of the mass murder of Americans and the destruction of the national symbols of our country. It's important to know precisely the consequences of their action, what the aftermath would have been if they hadn't acted. Tragically, they did not succeed in saving their own lives. But here's what they did succeed in doing. If not for their deed, the Capitol building, or the White House, would have been in flames on September 11, 2001. And there would have been many, many more dead. So reflect then on the horror of that day, magnified that much more. That's what they prevented. Because of what they did, we are reminded that it is still possible to act in this way, to unqualifiedly and unapologetically resist tyranny, terror, evil, to vigorously defend our fellows and our national symbols against those who would destroy both. I've been many times to that field in Chancellor, Pennsylvania, just a few hours from here, where the plane crashed, going almost 600 miles an hour, far short of its intended target because of what these Americans did. I'm going back there tomorrow, in fact. If you haven't been, please go. Go this weekend if you can, but go. It is a moving experience every single time, without fail for me. My friend, the late father, Alphonse Mascherino, who created the Flight 93 Memorial Chapel there only a few miles from the crash site, used to tell rapt congregations gathered there on the commemoration days what gave this simple Pennsylvania field its power. What did you expect to find here, he would ask. It's just an empty field. Except in this field, heroes die. Heroes die. Heroes. A great scholar of human culture once defined a hero in this way. He wrote, a hero is like a living symbol of a society. When a society takes consciousness of itself through its heroes, it feels that it takes its origins, its blood, its name from the prestige of their authority, their strength, and their worth. Divine symbols of societies, ideal actors of their histories, models of merit, examples of virtue, moral types and characters, all heroes in whatever degree, as symbols and types, help individuals and groups to become conscious of themselves. The quotation ends there. Some people, more than a few, even in positions of authority and with considerable influence over others, scoff at the very notion of a hero as the symbol of a people. It's too simple, they say, too exclusionary, too elitist. But I think it's painfully clear that the heroes of Flight 93 offer us a vision of who we are, or rather, of who we can be at our best. Courageous, resolute, self-determined, honorable. So I came here really just to remind you of these facts, and also to make one request of you. Don't forget these heroes. Please. Do your part to keep them in the collective consciousness of our country. Don't permit the mundane concerns of life, pleasantly distracting as they undoubtedly are, to wash their memory away. Don't allow cynicism and moral queasiness to provide a frame for our understanding of the deed of the passengers of United 93 and of the meaning of September 11, 2001. Remember these heroes. Say their names. Say Tom Burnett's name. Say also the names of the others who helped him lead the counterattack, to take that plane back from the terrorists, and to prevent it from being used to kill us and destroy our national symbols. Say the names of Todd Beamer, Jeremy Glick, Mark Bingham. Learn too and say the names of the other passengers on this plane. Remember them, these men and women whose bodies lie in that field a few hours from where you now sit, because they, who began September 11, 2001 as ordinary citizens, just like us, were transformed in the course of events into great heroes of our nation. Recite their names and remember what they did. Take heart from their name. Treasure them. Learn from them. Emulate them. Stand as they did. Because these, I tell you, are your heroes. Not the athletes, not the pop stars, not the actors, not the political figures represented by our mass media as those we should idolize and mimic. No, not them. Your heroes are these men and these women who, face to face with death, resisted darkness with all their will and with all their might, to the very end of their lives. Again, thank you very much for coming. And I believe our BSG is going to be talking to you for a few minutes. Again, thank you for your attention.